The Audio Vault on 94.1 San Antonio Sports Star is brought to you by AA Best Bail Bonds, 225-2121, or online at mybestbailbonds.com.
Frank Asloa knows horses. He is a blood stock agent. Joins us now on the Buyer's Barricades guest line. Frank, I debated whether bringing you back after the great advice you gave us on the Kentucky Derby.
Oh, yeah. Pretty tough trip for the horse I picked. I think the old saying is it might still be finishing the race 2 weeks later, but I did give you Mystic Dan underneath. I gave you Sierra Leone in the ticket. So I think you were pretty close to hitting something for a pretty big score, Jason.
I would have won $2,700 if you would have given me the right horse. I had 3 of the 4 horses were right. The one that I lost was dead last.
Yeah, I know. I know. He had a tough trip. It was a like I told you guys going into the Derby is the largest field that we run in America any point in 365 days. And the Derby is so much about a trip. And if you watch that race, Mystic Dan won that race by essentially a whisker. And it was because of the trip. The rider took a chance, squeezed through down on the inside, saved all the ground, and won the race. And, he didn't really run into a ton of trouble at all in the race, was in a pretty comfortable spot throughout. And, that's the difference to winning and running dead last, really. I mean, that's honestly the case with the Derby.
Let's talk about Mystic Dan, who is, of course, in this field, and it looks like his biggest competition got scratched. Is it a foregone conclusion that Mystic Dan is going to head into the third leg with 2 in his pocket? Are you seeing him as the horse to beat in this race?
I hope he wins, and I'm going to qualify it first, and I'm going to tell you I don't think he wins. I hope he wins because it's good for the sport. Anytime we go to the third leg of the Triple Crown, in terms of eyes on TVs, people wanting to go to a racetrack, anytime you have the Derby winner win the Preakness, it sets up for a very exciting day 3 weeks from tomorrow at the Belmont Stakes. Now, I don't think he wins. You just said, Muth scratching out of the race. Muth is the morning line favorite. He's trained by Bob Baffert. Bob Baffert is suspended from Churchill Downs Properties. Therefore, he could not have a horse race in the Kentucky Derby. So they targeted the Preakness. They shipped all the way across from California. The horse spikes a fever, misses training. Baffert does the right thing, scratches the horse. Well, he's the morning line favorite. Honestly, I think Muth wins the race if he's in it. He's that good, but he's not. Muth is also a speed horse. Mystic Dan needs a little bit of pace set up for him to be able to make his closing rally, like a lot of other horses in the race. With Muth out, it changes the entire complexion of the race, especially for Mystic Dan. So I don't think he wins tomorrow. I want him to win, but my gut tells me it's an uphill battle.
You said it's good for the sport, and we know there was a long time, between Triple Crown winners, almost 40 years, and then we had 2 in like a 3 or 4 year run. Did that kind of spoil the people to think like, oh, well, now we can get, it's not as big of a deal as it once was? Is it still as big of a deal now that American Pharoah and Justify won the Triple Crown? Does it feel like it's as huge for that third race to have a horse win the first 2?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's everything. The Triple Crown is arguably one of the most difficult feats in sports. It's 5 races at 2 turns, classic distances, 10 furlongs, 9.5 furlongs, and then, historically 12. This year's a little different because Belmont Park's under renovation. Having a horse go into the third leg of the Triple Crown creates a certain level of buzz. I equate in our industry, in the horse racing industry, it's like a game 7 of the NHL playoffs. If you have the Derby and Preakness winner be the be the same horse going into that third leg, it creates a massive buzz. Now, you're right. We have kind of been spoiled. It went 30 some odd years between Triple Crowns when American Pharoah conquered it, right? But then Justify follows it up. So it kind of spoils horse racing fans and people inside the industry, almost making it seem like, oh, it's not so difficult. Well, go back in that 30-year run between Secretariat, the 30-plus year run between Secretariat and American Pharoah. There were some ridiculous defeats in the Belmont Stakes. The Belmont Stakes is the hardest of these races to win because it's a mile and a half historically. As I said, this year is different, but it does create the buzz. We are a little spoiled. I hope we get Mystic Dan, but as I said, I don't, with the scratch of Muth, I just don't know how it sets up for him.
Frank Asloa, blood stock agent, our horse racing expert, joining us here on the Blitz on 94.1 at San Antonio Sports Star. Muth gets scratched. He spikes a fever. We're dealing with Bob Baffert here. He got a fever a couple of days ago. I know it's a knucklehead sounding question, but
you got COVID.
Well, it's a fever. Can we give him some NyQuil or something, get the fever down, and let the thing run?
No, because with the drug policies in effect that have gone into effect in the United States, which has been good for horse racing, creating uniform drug policies that every jurisdiction has to play by. So every trainer's playing by the same rules. The horse, if it goes into the race and it's running on some sort of sickness medication, right? It tests positive. Well, now we have a disqualification. We have a massive news story. What we're trying to avoid are these massive news stories.
Well, but if we know he's got a fever and he takes some cold medicine, don't you just make an exception to the rule? It's a fever.
It's not a performance enhancer.
12, but it can't. Like, this is the thing. It's a 1,200-pound animal. It's not like you and I. We take 3 or 4 Advil or ibuprofen. We cut the fever. We sweat it out overnight, and all of a sudden the next day it's gone. Horses spike temperatures. It's a sign of a larger illness. And what ends up happening is you miss 3 to 4 days of training. Well, training for these massive classic distance races, you cannot afford to miss any time because then your horse will not be performing at its highest on the big day. So honestly, it sounds silly to probably everyone else and most of the people listening to this, waiting for you guys to talk about the Spurs or the Cowboys, but it is a big deal in horses because they are 1,200-pound animals, and you can't just throw it a couple of ibuprofen and all of a sudden, poof, it's gone.
What did you do when you used to weigh 1,200 pounds and had a fever, Minix?
NyQuil.
Okay, yeah,
that'd be fine.
Just a lot of NyQuil.
That'd be fine.
Just
Same with Frank. I mean,
Minix just chugged an entire bottle of NyQuil and slept for 4 days.
I mean, it works.
Yeah, and then
you wake up, no fever.
The difference was when you woke up, you didn't want to run.
I didn't want to run before I went to bed. There's a difference there. I mean, a big difference there. All right, so Frank, a lot of people are going to put money on Mystic Dan. You want it to happen, but where's the smart money going then if you don't think Mystic Dan actually wins?
The other Baffert horse, Imagination, is a speed horse. He could be lone speed. I think he's going to take a lot of money because Bob Baffert had 2 horses in the race. With the scratch of Muth, the horse Imagination had been running against pretty good competition out in California. He's been a little bit of a bridesmaid in terms of the winner circle picture. He's gotten pieces in some big races, but he hasn't always kind of finished the deal. This is the furthest that horse will ever have run in his life. I still think he takes money. Obviously, Mystic Dan takes money. I don't really think either of those are a good bet. Baffert's going to take money because of the name. Mystic Dan's going to take money because he's going to be the apple of everybody's eye. I think there's another opportunity in the race that makes a lot more sense, and I think that's Tuscan Gold. Tuscan Gold is trained by Chad Brown, who's one of the best trainers in the country. He's historically, over the course of his career, known more for turf horses, but this is a purely dirt-bred horse. They paid a lot of money for it. It's lightly raced. It's a big, good-looking colt, and I think he is the play tomorrow in that race. He has enough tactical speed to be close, and I think that's going to be the key. With Muth out, you're going to have to be close. I don't think the pace, the fractions of the race are going to be extremely quick. So you're going to want to be closer, and I think Tuscan Gold can be there and has the stamina to withhold the 9.5 furlong race.
All right, so Tuscan Gold.
Well,
and now that we're doing this on air, Minix, the horse is probably going to still be finishing the race in 3 weeks.
Now,
I've
won money listening to your advice before. Last week was about as bad as it gets because not only did I have everything right, but that one, and it would have been a lot of money, but it became in dead last. It wasn't even close.
At least you didn't have to watch the second half of the race. You knew at halftime.
Dude, it was 2 minutes.
Like the Nuggets, you knew.
Honestly, AJ, I knew the race was over for the horse that I really liked going into it. I knew the race was over about 4 strides in.
Oh, no.
I was like, when they broke the gate, I was like, oh, no, he just got – I mean, I always tell people go back and watch replays when you're trying to bet horse racing because, like, it's better than paper. You can learn a lot more about how a horse fared. If you went back and you just singled and just, like, watched only that one horse, it was a complete disaster from start to finish.
And it was where all your money was too, so I didn't feel as bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you even had a horse in the race. I mean, and your horse isn't going to the Preakness.
Ran good.
He did run good. Lost money on that one too.
No, he's getting some time off. He's going to have a little bit of time off and sort of reset and come back toward the summer and the fall. Which is important for young horses like that.
One last question. If we do get we get Mystic Dan win the second leg here, when he gets to the Belmont Stakes, would there be an asterisk because he didn't run the longer race? Would it be looked at as like a Triple Crown with a notation?
I think it could happen to like the outside folks. Inside the horse racing industry, I think we'll still look at it as the Triple Crown accomplishment because it is 3 races, over 5 weeks. Normally these horses race once every 5 weeks. So to be able to accomplish the feat, 3 races in 5 weeks is pretty extraordinary. I mean, that's why we're not talking about hundreds of Triple Crown winners. That's the major thing. Now, sure, the shorter distance, being at Saratoga instead of in New York City at Belmont Park, like, yeah, I'm sure there will be some people that go, well, that was, how we always did like the COVID championships and stuff like that in the NBA and the NHL and the NFL and all that stuff. I'm sure there will be a little bit of that, but it's still a massive accomplishment for any horse in this industry to accomplish 3 wins at classic distances. It's not like it's going to be a half a mile race. It's still going to be a 2-turn, 10 furlong test. Yes, it's not a mile and a half. It's a mile and a quarter, but it's still a massive accomplishment.
Frank Asloa, Bloodstock Agent, Preakness tomorrow. He likes Tuscan Gold to win. Tell me what your box look like. You go up to the window at Retama tomorrow.
What do you say?
Tell me exactly. What are we saying?
Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward. I think the 4 logical contenders to me are, you've got to use Mystic Dan. He shows up every time and he runs his race. Now, there should be, and I told you guys this going into the Derby, moisture in the ground. It's been a lot of rain in the Mid-Atlantic. We had a lot of rain Tuesday and Wednesday of this week. It's raining right now. On Friday, it's going to rain a little bit more overnight. So that'll put more moisture in the ground. So I think you have to use Mystic Dan. And if your heart says bet Mystic Dan, I'm not going to fault you. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of this whole thing. You have to use Mystic Dan. I think you have to use Catching Freedom, who ran 4th in the Derby. He wheels back in 2 weeks. His trainer, Brad Cox, says the horse has been doing phenomenal since the Derby. But again, he's pace dependent. And without a ton of speed in the race, like, I think he can get a piece. I think Imagination can hold on for 3rd or 4th. So I would use Tuscan Gold over Mystic Dan, Catching Freedom, and Imagination. It's not really a wild take because if you look at the odds, it sort of makes a ton of sense. I'm just trying to find the longest shot, the best value with Tuscan Gold on top. So I would bet Tuscan Gold to win, and then I would bet Mystic Dan underneath in exactas and trifectas, meaning 1st or 2nd or 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Catching Freedom and Imagination.
All right. Now, Frank, just so you know, on our YouTube feed in the chat, Joshua says Tuscan Gold sucks, and Jay Braun says Mugata is going to pull up the upset. Get rich quick.
Mugatu is another one of these horses.
Sounds like a bad song from the 90s.
Needs, yeah, exactly. It's like an old hair metal band. Mugatu needs a lot like Mystic Dan. Well, more. It's worse for Mugatu. Mugatu is probably going to be last early. He does not benefit at all with Moose not in the race. He needs speed. He needs something to catch. He needs a target. I don't think he's going to have it. I just think that it's not going to be an extremely fast race. It's going to be very technical and very tactful on the riders. This is a race. We talked about it going into the Derby. Do you put a lot of stock into the jockeys? Not really in the Derby. It's the world's best, and it's 20 horses. It's really all about the gate break and how you sort of set up. The Preakness, this is going to be a jockey's race in a lot of ways. Who is in the right spot at the right time and pushes the button at the right time?
Good stuff. All right. Tuscan Gold, Mystic Dan, Catching Freedom, Imagination, says Bloodstock Agent Frank Asloa.
You love saying that word.
I'm still trying to figure out what the hell you actually do for a living. He spends rich people's money buying horses.
Good work if you can get it.
That's sort of the Cliff Notes version, I guess.
Look at me. I mean,
don't want to get too complicated. You spend rich people's money. They give you a pile of money and say, go buy me horses, and you do.
Okay, I guess you're kind of on the
a
little bit.
Okay, yeah.
Some guy says, here's $400,000, go buy me a horse. Or here's $25,000, good luck. Get me something, right?
Yeah, as I've told you before, it's like a realtor for horses. Like it's a lot of shopping and hunting, and it's a little bit more. But yes, it's you've sort of done the Spark Notes version.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to be known as the horse hunter. That just sounds bad.
Yeah, I don't.
Not that Bloodstock Agent sounds better.
You know me well. Hunting is not really a forte of mine.
Not with horses, anyway. Bars, cougar hunting, that's a whole different story. Stone Oak misses you in a variety of ways. Frank, man, have fun this weekend. Appreciate you jumping on.
All right, guys, have a good one.